The poems that are left out of Stranger Music, is it possible they'll die because they're left out? I mean, is it possible that you are here and as every time you do this act, because I'm sure you'll do it again, that you're saying these are the poems that should live, and by doing that, saying the rest don't matter as much?
Yeah, there's probably something savage about making a selection at all. I mean, not that anybody, this matters to anybody, but, maybe a little later on, collected poems. I think that those are the ones that define somebody's work. Selected is a selection. Collected, I think, are the poems you want to keep circulating.
Can I hear your version of a story that's been published twice already this year and involves you? It's a kind of nice story, but this is from about the time that you would have written that poem. It would be sometime in the 60s. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but there's a gathering at Irving Layton's house. I think you all used to gather at Irving's house every Saturday or so.
Well, there were.
Oh no, this was at Frank Scott's house.
Yeah,
right?
Frank Scott's house. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're all there. Everybody, Ralph Gustafson and Al Purdy and Irving Layton and Louis Dudek and this is the time when Leonard Cohen announces that he's just discovered Bob Dylan. And is it Frank Scott who goes out and buys the Dylan record, comes back, brings it to the party, and it's not a major hit?
No.
What's your version? Because both Louis Dudek and Al Purdy have published this anecdote. It's quite charming.
Well, it's something like that. I mean, those were great evenings. There were the gathering of Montreal poets at Irving Layton's house or Frank Scott's place. And some of them were not as festive as that particular night. In those gatherings, often we'd read, and you'd have to defend every line, every word. I mean, the criticism was brutal. I mean, I saw people crying. In fact, I saw Frank Scott crying at one of those gatherings.
Over something he'd read and got beaten up for?
Yeah, and he said, I remember him there. He was a very noble chap, and he read something and people pounced on it. People pounced on anything he said.
You would stand up and actually, before they'd stop, because the story was there wasn't much drinking. It would just be like coffee.
I don't think you had to stand up. You'd be sitting around and you'd be drinking, and it became the convention to read poems in these gatherings, and people were very passionate. I mean, the 5 or 6 or 8 of us that were involved in this enterprise were very serious about it, because there were no rewards in this time. There wasn't a Canada Council. There wasn't even a woman who cared about this matter. This was...
There was, Larry. It
No,
took you a while to find them.
But I mean, there was no significance to the enterprise, and I remember Frank Scott, who was Dean of Law at McGill University, reading a poem. People moved in against it ferociously, and we were all a bit in our cups, and he started to weep, and he said, "I've spread myself too thin. I wanted to be a poet. I've spread myself too thin." So they were very, very serious moments in people's lives, those little gatherings. But at one of them, I announced that a great poet had arisen, had raised his voice, and his name was Bob Dylan. And I was very enthusiastic about it. I think it was one of Bob Dylan's very early records. This is the early 60s. And Frank Scott ran down to, I think, International Music at the time, and bought the record, came back and played it. And the reviews were not glowing.
Yeah.
He was dismissed.
Purdy says now that he sounded like a flock of Canada geese.
There is a good honk in Dylan's voice. It's true.
Yeah. Did anybody like him other than you?
No. Nobody liked him, and nobody was really willing to listen. Another time, I dragged Irving into a cafe, into a coffee shop where they had those little jukeboxes in the booths. Remember those?
Yeah.
And there was a couple of Dylan tunes there, and I made poor Irving bend over and lean his ear against the little machine, and I made him listen to a few of Dylan's lyrics, and he never thought that Dylan had any particular significance. Of course, he never thought that Allen Ginsberg or anybody else had any particular significance.
You better watch out because he thought you had particular significance.
He was very kind to me.
Yeah.
Irving was very, very kind to me. He introduced me to Jack McClellan.
At that time, I wrote a piece, I think, maybe a little later, about how important Dylan was. I mean, Bob Dylan was and this was the new age. I may have changed my mind since. Have you?
I think that Dylan has written some of the greatest songs of this period. You know, I don't know.
Of the period we're talking about, of the 60s.
Yeah.
But since then?
Well, since then, I think the man deserves a rest. You know, he's written a couple hundred songs that'll probably be around for a while. You know, out of every record he puts out, although some of the stuff is very tricky to listen to, there's always a song. You know, there's always one song on every album that is pretty good.
Could you ever do all the words to Tambourine Man in the right order?
No, I never got that. But there's one image of one hand dancing free. There's some beautiful images in that song.
But it was so hard to sing because you could never remember what order all the images came in.
That's true.
Now you have brought along a tape of your forthcoming live album.
Yeah, this
oxymoron if I ever heard one.
I don't know which track.
Bird on the Wire we have right now.
I think that's from O'Keefe Center. I guess it was in July.
Here in Toronto?
Here in Toronto, yeah.
That's wonderful, that piece.
Oh, thanks a lot.
But you changed it.
July 16th at O'Keefe. No, I never felt I finished that song.
Yeah?
And I kept changing it over and over. And changed in concert, too, of course, you know.
Do you wing some of that? I mean, do you get into the song?
Well, originally, to get to that particular version, it was winging it, but then, you know, after it winged it a few times, it's set.
There's a little Bob Dylan in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ain't no use in crying out my name, babe. It's a little.
Sometimes I pay homage to Dylan by using the word babe, which is a word I never use in a song. But I meant to say baby.
Yeah.
But it was the whine. I couldn't get that final syllable out.
Who's with you on that other than the people you... And even you, when you introduce your orchestra, you have to say Mr. Where does this tradition come from? When you introduce the guys playing with you, you always say, and on trumpet, Mr.
I think it comes from a time when, you know, musicians didn't get no respect.
So who are the backup singers there? That the usual?
Yes, those are two young women I've worked with for many years, Perla Bataya and Julie Christensen. In fact, they're coming up to the Governor General's gala, and they're singing a couple of songs of mine this weekend.
Well, I was hoping you would make your acceptance speech with some doo-wahs in the background.
I don't think you have to make an acceptance speech.
Boy. Better find out before you go there. Who's done the best version of Bird on the Wire other than you? Have you heard Tom Cochran's beautiful piece?
Yeah, it's very fine.
Isn't it?
I like that very much.
He's the guy who's known for belting it out, but when he does a quiet acoustic guitar, Bird on the Wire.
Oh, it's a beautiful version of his. Yeah, I like it very much. I don't know, I go into immediate critical suspension when anybody covers one of my songs.
Now that song's in the book.
Yeah, in the original version, which Willie Nelson just recorded in exactly that original version. A very, very beautiful, pure version of it.
Willie picked up a book of poems and said, I'm going to record it.
I got to do this.